T-minus 10, 9.
You're listening to the Launchpad Podcast with J-Man.
Brought to you by GallantMEDIA.
2, 1.
Here's your host,
Ignition.
J-Man.
I do like myself, and I do, take care of myself better than I ever did at any point in my life. And when shit's bothering me, I fucking talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Theo, this is a PG show. I'm kidding.
I'm sorry.
I'm fucking with you.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, I always say I grew up in a locker room.
Right. You can't help yourself.
Where fuck was used as a verb, an adjective, a proposition, all of it, right?
Right.
I'll tell you a great story. So when I was in New York, Ronnie Lowe was my coach. And we had a 45-minute video meeting. And he said, fuck, 450 times in 45 minutes. I counted all of them.
Really?
Yeah. So,
it's a good meeting.
Yes.
Got a lot accomplished. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Okay, so...
But he got his point across.
He did, right. There's something to be said about that word. Do you care if people like you?
Well, I don't want people to dislike me, but it's not a high on my priority list.
Right.
If I've always felt that it's more important to earn respect than it is to earn adoration or seek adoration. Mm-hmm. There are people who dislike me. I hold views that are not shared by people who are nihilists and people who want to destroy our society. And I'm not liked by socialists and but that's okay with me.
Right.
I don't dislike people who hold different views, but I will debate and argue those and also defend everybody's, I understand this fully well, that public policy and the creating of public policy and law requires a level of tension and adversity to be in competition with one another. If you want to get a good policy at the end of the day, somebody needs to put out a thought, and it has to be tested, and it has to be tested robustly.
Right. Yeah, a healthy level of conflict.
I'll send you my best 6 videos, very short videos that show concretely that the average human has no idea how their behavior is manufactured. Sure. So you can put that in the show notes. But let's take example. There was a movie in 2001. It was called Gone in 60 Seconds. It was about car theft. It was Angelina Jolie and Nicolas Cage. And I think it was Nicolas Cage had to save his brother or maybe his cousin. I think it was his brother, his younger brother. And they had to steal 100 cars it was a very short amount of time. Uh-huh. Now, repetition is what hacks the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is the part of the brain that most people they're not aware of because it's outside their conscious awareness. It's obsessed with repetition. And we'll get into why maybe later in the discussion. But during when this movie about car theft, and there was a lot of positive reinforcement about the car theft because Nicolas Cage got the girl. And that really is what the subconscious mind is looking for too, positive reinforcement. Right. And when this movie was released in Burnaby, BC, Canada, car theft went up 65% in the first 10 days. Now, if you were to tell someone that if they watched a movie about car theft, they would go execute car thefts, they would say, no, I know that's wrong. But if you go to a psychology library and get into how human behavior is literally manufactured as a script by the subconscious mind, and it's very powerful at what its job is. Its job, the reason it's making those people steal the cars is because the subconscious, like the target of all these mind brainwashing techniques, the subconscious is in charge of your safety, your security, and your survival. This is a hackable protocol. And how picture it as, puffing up its chest and really getting in front of you and saying, hey, Jason, I'm going to protect you today. This is its job. It does this without your conscious awareness. How it accomplishes this goal is it scans the environment for repetition and forces you to act out the repetition. Now, why would it count and rank? And it almost takes, Jason, almost like a piece of paper, a pad, and it counts the repetitive content in your environment. And then it's almost like it pushes that pad of paper up into your behavior system, your neurological system. You think you're acting out, making your life decisions based on careful consideration. If you go to a psychology library, you are not. You are getting fed scripts. And the reason the subconscious mind is looking for the content that's most repetitive is because it knows one thing through a lot of genetic experience. Repetition denotes the bigger herd. The bigger herd is the safer herd.
But it came down for you to balance and clarity. Why do you believe that those two things are such an integral part of people living a beautiful life, no matter what the circumstances?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. My wholehearted belief and philosophy towards life is I subscribe to the philosophy that I'm a three-part being. I'm a body, I'm a mind, and I'm a spirit. And in doing so, I believe that if there's three parts to me, that I need to exercise those three parts. So we have to. When you talk about exercising the body, well, we can think of a million ways to do it. When you talk about exercising the mind, there's apps now, the luminosities apps of the world. There's reading, there's journaling. There's all these things that you can do to stimulate the brain. You can take a course. You can listen to the Launchpad and get some gems of wisdom.
Thank you.
But the truth is that then there's the spiritual side. And of course, with the spiritual side, there is a lot you can do. Certainly over the last, decade, there's been lots of talk of meditation, lots of talk of reflection and mindfulness. But there's more to spirituality than that. And one of the biggest components to that is the idea of just helping other people. That this idea that we'll feel so much better about ourselves if we can help other people. So you've got these 3 points of the triangle. If you exercise those 3 points of the triangle, you talk about inner balance. So we talk about the word. You said balance and clarity. So the balance part comes in, which really ties in, J-Man, perfectly to what I'm studying now, which is choice theory. That the basic premise is that I can only control my own behavior. I can't control anybody else's. And that we are an internal control system. And therefore, we should not let the external psychology affect the internal.
Right.
So if we have this inner balance, that we are balanced body, mind, and spirit, whatever we have happening on the inside will manifest on the outside. And then the outside will be balanced. Now, the clarity part comes in that if you believe in a universal source of power, the universe is going to be hard bent trying to help you if you have no idea what it is that you want, what it is, more importantly, that you desire.
Right.
So if I take a pizza pie, I like pizza. I'm Italian, AOOA. If I take a pizza pie and I cut it up into 8 pieces and I name those pieces 8 things that are important in my life: family, health and wellness, spiritual development, social, passions, career, finances, whatever it is, whatever's that important to you, then you can start creating the desired end state. What it is that you're looking from that particular component in your life.
EA Sports. It's in the game.
I'm going to fanboy out just a little bit. Like, I used to play your character in video games.
Of course.
You were like the fastest dude. I think it was like you and McGillney were like, did you ever track the progress of your player in video games? Were you ever into it that way, or did you ever play your own character?
I was awful at the hockey, right?
Really?
Yeah. And what I loved the PGA Tour game on Sega Genesis, right?
The best, yes.
Yeah, was unreal. And you know what's funny is I just saw the documentary for the 94 EA Sports hockey game. Have you seen that documentary yet?
No, I didn't even know that was out.
Oh my God. Like, there's a guy that lives way up in the Yukon who like did a whole documentary on this cult of 94 people. And it's awesome. It's so great. The documentary is awesome. And I was actually up in the Yukon speaking. I was doing a speaking tour through the Yukon, and he caught wind that I was going to be there. And so I'm actually, I'm in the documentary talking about this video game. So it's kind of cool.
And Randy, like, you're killing me with these photos. Like, you're killing me. So it's obvious that you have a large circle, as we saw with your Christmas photo, right? And most recently, just a night out with the boys.
Yeah.
So do you think that this does more damage than good by sharing these photos? Let me just follow up with that. What's your intention when you're sharing these photos?
That's a good starting point, Jason, is the intention. And let me frame it this way. I know that there is a great number of people in this country who do not share the government's narrative and the public health narrative that we should be fearful and that we should be living in isolation and confinement and that we should be living without freedoms or constitutional protections, and that this COVID is the greatest threat to mankind. There's a great many people that recognize the evidence doesn't support that narrative, right? But we also understand this, that there are many people, doctors, police, politicians by the many, academics, teachers, who would like to speak out against this, but they're fearful of being marginalized at their work, or they're fearful of actually losing their job, or being kicked out of caucuses, and they're fearful of the slaying and the public shaming that the mainstream media and the trolls on social media will come at you. So we're not getting a healthy debate. We're actually suffocating and preventing dissenting views from being heard. And that's what those pictures demonstrate, is what everybody else is doing, Jason, what so many people are doing. And I want them to have the courage to do similar and say, no, this is a free country, and I have the freedom to express myself. I have the freedom to meet with my friends and my loved ones, and I'm also free to accept the judgment and the public shaming, because I grew up in a time when we knew sticks and stones may break my bones, Jason, but names are never going to hurt me. So we need to have a healthy debate, and we can't do that unless we are confident in ourselves and are free to express ourselves.
Okay, so one of the follow-up questions I was going to ask was, do you understand the anger? And you've expressed that you know why there's anger, because you just have a different view than would be considered the norm or conventional. But I will ask this: are you not afraid that these photos give them, the powers that be, more firepower? For instance, just the optics, the perception that they're going to use this as an example to personify that there's obviously private gatherings going on, and we hear these numbers all the time in regards to 50% of people gathered over Christmas, 30% of people gathered over Christmas, just these made up numbers. I mean, because no one's calling them other than you, Randy, to let them know where you're at, right? No one else is doing that. So I think what they do is that they're taking situations like this, and now these become the beacons as to the private gatherings and things of that nature. Do you feel differently?
Well, we know that's all bullshit. Okay,
Right.
and let's call it for what it is.
Okay.
You know, for 11 months or 10 months, I've been quite public and vocal about my opposition. I have attended multiple protests and gatherings, and I've shook hands and hugged and I've done all these things over the last year. And I still don't know a single person who has a single symptom from COVID. Okay. Now, that's not to say it doesn't exist,
Right.
but let's recognize that the people who are at risk from COVID are people who are very elderly, who are very frail, and who have significant other health illnesses that are in long-term care. These people are who are at risk from this respiratory virus. Not me, not you, not anybody who has come over to my house has ever reported back on any COVID symptoms or any positive cases. So I put that out. Just how bloody dangerous is this if I can do everything that I've done and still not have any symptoms, and nor anybody that I know.
Now, in regards to control, because you're saying in regards to controlling the masses or the herd, who are they? And is it for money, or is it for some other type of absolute power, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's just a maintenance of a system. Basically, for the people who are in power to maintain theirs, we always get the impression that they have more power than the average person. But the reason they got that is by removing yours and transferring it to them, and poisoning you and tricking you with the kamikaze mind control, which actually named after kamikaze pilots, by the way, because they actually literally killed themselves very quickly to be part of the herd. The subconscious was like, this is great. We'll kill ourselves, but we'll be really well liked. That's how easy it is to trick. It's got some flaws, AJ. This part of the brain's got some major flaws. It could be definitely hacked. And so the people that are in control, they know that the media, and the word media as well, it's from the word media is actually the name of a country, an ancient country that we now know as Turkey. It used to be called Media, and the people who lived there were called the Medes, and the Medes specialized in training other families of high stature around the Mediterranean how to use the repetitive content to control and extract the power from the slave class and keep them under control. And someone says, well, what media was in play beyond the Netflix and, the movies? There was no TVs in ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, where this technology was used prolific, at a very high intensity. Well, they would use the town square. That's what it was. All these Shakespearean plays were the Netflix equivalent of what we see today.
Okay.
And so basically, for people to maintain power, the messier you are, the easier it is. The more in fear you are, the easier it is, because the fear triggers the limbic system, and then you're very prone to follow. Logical thought and rational thought only occur in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain behind the forehead, and fear shuts it off because you're not supposed to be a deep thinker when you're in a stress situation. It's a great design, right? Like you get chased by the pit bull, the deep thinking part of the brain shuts off, and then the limbic system is more getting real, like literally asking the subconscious to take full control.
Okay.
So if your prefrontal cortex is off because of fear of poisoning, you're literally asking this part of the brain that does the script pushing to take over more control of your behavior. So the media today uses repetitive content, and you can see what the most repetitive content is today. They're using that purposely to invoke fear. They're manufacturing behaviors and beliefs and ideas based on the repetitive content, and people are acting it out. I mean, mind control is not about a zombie drooling blood, arms out straight, moaning and groaning. It's about Jim at the coffee shop repeating what the TV said. No research, no books behind them to research anything. Most people like Karen and Kevin Coffee Shop who think they know what's going on, they're simply victims of this mind control technology. Not one book in their house, but adamant they know what's going on. And when you talk to them, the only thing they say is exactly what the TV says. They can't see it, but other people can. And then there's that intelligence differential where they're looking at you and you're looking at them, and they're basically looking at you saying, we can't believe you're courageous enough to be outside the herd. And we're looking at them saying, we can't believe you're believing this because there is no safety in this herd. You're on a road to nowhere. And that's how these sort of interactions go on between people who know the mind control technology and people who have no idea that your TV screen, your phone screen, and your movie screen are not there to entertain you. They are there to entrain you and hack your subconscious mind with repetitive content.
Yeah, I think so. So look, the first half of my career, I was a naval warfare officer on board Her Majesty's Canadian ship Algonquin and then Vancouver. And that is it's a very demanding job. So those are the primary leaders on board Canada's warships. They lead the watch on deck. They're responsible for the safety and security of 200 of their shipmates. And they have to become proficient in several warfare areas so that if they ever are in a conflict, they can defend and fight the ship appropriately. And along with that came, at the time, I think, a very prescriptive idea of what a good leader was. And a good leader wasn't necessarily a bubbly, feminine energy. It was a hard-charging, ball-breaking, get-her-done type of role. And I want to say, like back in the day, some of the things I brought to the table weren't necessarily embraced as typical leadership. And I remember back in the day, so I tried to adapt to what was perceived as that ideal leadership standard. And I really didn't like the person I was becoming because I found like I was becoming sarcastic and sharp and hard-edged. And while I think we should always adapt our personality and adapt our leadership style, I didn't sort of like the general feel that I was left with. And at the end of the day, I kind of had a reckoning with myself, and I am a girly girl. I am bubbly. I care for my people, and I can still do this job. So I sort of tried to let my true self shine through a little bit more rather than sort of defaulting to what was the ideal. And at the end of the day, I think I was fairly successful. I loved leading sailors on board the ship. I loved working with our engineers in the engine room. And I think I was able to inject the appropriate level of fun to keep the team motivated without once I sort of realized, hey, it's okay if I don't conform. And I don't really think it had a negative impact. I think we sometimes, as leaders, when we're in difficult situations, we care too much about what other people think, or we try to adapt to what we think other people want to think, or what we think other people will want us to be. But you know what? Know who you are and know your strengths, and then lean on those strengths. And I think you can achieve what you set out to be in a fairly successful manner.
How do we deal with the isolation that we may be finding ourselves in, and at the same time being able to provide that safe space for your child?
So I believe in open communication. So if an adult, if a parent is feeling withdrawn, isolated, frustrated, fearful, we have to share that piece without giving details of what is really bothering us, because we don't want to place that on our kids. But sharing that kind of commonality of this is real, and it's okay to feel these emotions. So I have two daughters, 16 and a half and 13 and a half. And we often talked about what that feels like, because even though we're family, we may not always think the same and feel the same. So one child could be withdrawn, one can be completely, clingy, and we wouldn't know what would be the difference. So understanding our own child first would be probably the foremost. And if it's out of the norm, completely out of the norm, how they're feeling, that connect with them and talk to them saying, honey, like, this is what we feel, us as parents. Do you feel the same way, or how do you feel? And sharing that insight, because it makes them feel safe.
Is there something that a child might say that might be one of those moments where they're really asking for help? They're suffering, and it may not come across like that in the statement itself.
So my youngest one, who's 13 and a half, she has special needs. So cognitively, she's about 10. So she was in the beginning of COVID. She actually, after the first part of the year, 2020, she ended up going into school. And I think she lasted about a week. And what that looked like was she was withdrawn. She was showing signs of not, like frowning, tense. So her body was tense, and she hardly was eating. So I asked her, I said, what is going on? Are you okay? And she's like, Mom, I can't do this. I can't wear the mask. I really, there's too many rules. And for someone who's a parent to special needs kids, they maintain, and they need to maintain rules and schedules and routines. With anything that's add on, it puts a wrench into how they deal with it. It's too overwhelming. So she couldn't understand why she just couldn't breathe through this, and it was too much for her. So we went into online learning, and she has thrived for a while. But, as you and I have been through, the Zoom fatigue is that kids are seeing that now. We're seeing that in the kids with online learning. We're seeing that impact of, I'm tired, I can't do this. Sleep, insomnia. We're having insomnia now in kids more than we've ever seen before. And now as parents, we get worried, like, my kid is not sleeping. I try everything. And then naturally, we as parents would feel frustrated because we're trying to do everything possible for our kids to manage and keep them safe without them self-harming, going down to the depression site, which is a huge thing right now in teens and preteens. So it's actually allowing themselves to feel okay to say, Mom, I don't want to disappoint you. Dad, I don't want to disappoint you, but this is not working for me. And can we put our expectations aside as parents and say, yes, I get it. I get it.
Right. To allow them to have that voice.